What's happening right now in Washington is a big and important argument at the U.S. Supreme Court. And it's, undergirding the argument is whether Trump has the right to end birthright citizenship. But it's not really what's coming up today. What's really being argued is, can federal district courts issue nationwide injunctions as opposed to an injunction that just affects the litigants in front of them, or perhaps even the people who are in the jurisdiction of said federal district court, but not something that would stop a presidential executive order or a congressional law from proceeding coast to coast? Is that too much power that was never envisioned or intended for federal district court judges? So I've been on the air for most of this time, so I haven't been following what's happened since then. But what I'm hearing is that there's a shot, which I think is actually quite good news for Donald Trump, that there's a shot of stopping the nationwide injunction thing would be big. If Trump can get 5 justices to say that, he can restart his agenda, which has been held up by these nationwide injunctions. I'll play you a couple of sound bites and just listen to, I'll just frame the basic debate. You're going to hear in some of these sound bites them discussing Rule 23, which governs when a class action can be filed. And what Trump's lawyer is arguing is basically that's his name is John Sauer. You'll hear him in these sound bites. He has like a scratchy voice. He's trying to say on behalf of Trump, if you're going to get a nationwide injunction, you have to file a class action. You have to say, I'm here to represent everybody who's in this affected class of like people who no longer will have birthright citizenship. And then only the U.S. Supreme Court would be able to issue such an injunction for you. And the other side is saying, no, there's nothing wrong with nationwide injunctions. And at best, you could say maybe they could only be limited, used in certain small, limited circumstances. So you hear Rule 23, they're talking about class actions. Let's take a listen to a little bit of how, here in this one, Sonia Sotomayor, who might be the dumbest one on, I don't know, I'm sorry, but she's like, it's tight, but I think she's my number one favorite for dumbest. She's questioning Sauer, that's Trump's guy, Solicitor General, and you'll hear she tries to interrupt him, and John Roberts, the Chief Justice, isn't happy. Listen.
Both the Supreme Court and no lower court can stop an executive from universally from violating those holdings by this court.
We are not claiming that because we're conceding that there could be an inappropriate case.
Only a class, only
Can I hear the rest of his answer?
A Rule 23 class action. And then the more fundamental point as to all those Supreme Court decisions you referred to.
So what do we do temporarily?
Temporarily, the court may issue, the lower courts may issue injunctions that remediate the injuries to the plaintiffs that appear before them.
He's saying issue injunctions that apply only to the litigants in front of you. But that's a good sign for Trump that John Roberts wanted to hear him out, because he's kind of wishy-washy, as people know. And what Jonathan Turley tweeted out this morning is that, from what he heard, Justices Thomas, Alito, and Kavanaugh seem strongly in favor of the administration. Roberts also made repeated points that seemed to support some of the arguments of the administration, though it was not clear how he would vote. On the left, you've got, of course, Kagan and Sotomayor and Ketanji Brown Jackson, and the fight is over Gorsuch and Barrett, 2 Trump-appointed judges. Gorsuch has previously expressed criticism of universal injunctions, but asked probing questions on both sides. Barrett seemed more accommodating in seeking a way to uphold universal injunctions. In other words, Turley writes, this could be a nail-biter. But a nail-biter, again, I think for Trump is maybe better, Tom, than Trump, well, maybe not Trump himself, but his top legal advisors would have expected.
I agree with that. And, Clarence Thomas had said during these hearings that the country got along just fine without nationwide injunctions until 1960. These are a relatively new phenomenon, and they've happened a lot more since Trump took office in 2016, 2017. And I think some of the numbers on that is, I think something like 75% of the national injunctions have been against Donald Trump just in the last 10 years. So This is a problem that has cropped up recently that is now being dealt with. And I agree with you. I think the way this has gone so far it looks decent for Trump, but it probably is going to be pretty close.
Here's that sound in SOT 31 from Justice Thomas.
General, when were the first universal injunctions used?
We believe that the best reading of that is what you said in Trump against Hawaii, which is that Wirtz in 1963 was really the first universal injunction. There's a dispute about Perkins against Lukens Oil going back to 1940. And of course, we point to the court's opinion that reversed that universal injunction issued by the D.C. Circuit and said it's profoundly wrong. So when the court has considered and addressed this, it has consistently said you have to limit the remedy to the plaintiffs who are appearing in court and complaining of that remedy.
So we survived until the 1960s without universal injunctions.
That's exactly correct. And in fact, those were very limited, very rare, even in the 1960s. It really exploded in 2007 in our cert petition in Summers against Earth Island Institute. We pointed out that the Ninth Circuit had started doing this in a whole bunch of cases involving environmental claims.
What do you make of it, Carl Cannon? Because even though I don't like what's happening to the Trump agenda, I've got to be honest, I really loved that nationwide injunction stopping Joe Biden's revisions of Title IX and sat on this set and cheered it. However, that was a different story. We didn't have these ubiquitous courts issuing them to stop an entire presidential agenda. So what are your thoughts, Carl?
Well, Elena Kagan said an interesting thing. I was listening to the oral arguments. You can't watch it, but you can listen, right, on C-SPAN.
Yeah.
And she said, well, this executive order, and she's talking about Trump rescinding birthright citizenship. She said it's just wrong. It's unconstitutional. She sort of said it like she thought the other justices would agree with it. That's a obvious thing. And then she said, so what's our remedy? So what she's trying to do is remind the judges, is to remind her colleagues, probably the two you mentioned, Megyn, this is not just about, it's not a law school exercise. It's just not about all these, Democratic judges around the country doing various things to thwart Trump. It's about this case, birthright citizenship, and what else can the court, what else can these courts do but just issue an injunction? So she was trying to get them back on what she thinks is a safer ground for the liberal bloc, which is this birthright citizen question, and away from what we're talking about.
They're definitely not going to go there. I mean, you know this as well as I do, Andrew, that the Supreme Court likes to decide things as narrowly as possible. And there's no way they're just going to be like, oh, and also let's take on birthright citizenship while we're all here.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about this, to me, is also the fact that this is really very important for for progressives, because this is sort of one of the last levers they have left is these courts. They have no control in the Hill. The party's in disarray. So they've really relied on the courts to sort of do what they want. And as you pointed out, this is not just a Trump. Trump isn't the first president, I'll put it this way, who doesn't like doesn't like these injunctions. So it's not just like this sort of, every executive doesn't like the fact that anybody messes with what they're trying to do, let alone sort of local courts. So it is being framed narrowly, as you say, about this sort of what seems like a procedural question. And it'll be interesting to see when they get to the substance of it, if they ever do get to the substance of it, how they rule, because that's a constitutional case that I think would be a lot harder for the president to make.
Oh, yeah. And that one will get there, too. That's going to wind its way up. I mean, these cases are those cases that will come back after they get litigated on the merits to the Supreme Court, but they have to get past this first thing about whether the injunctions that were issued in stopping Trump's executive order saying no more birthright citizenship can stand. So these are the cases that will put that substantive challenge in front of the Supreme Court at some point next year, probably, but they're not there yet. Okay, so that's an interesting point. I just want to, before we leave this, Tom, Andrew's not wrong. This is resistance 2.0. This is what the lawfare. And how have they been doing it? I mean, through left-wing judges they pick selectively. They file in exactly the jurisdictions they know they're going to do well in, like D.C. And if the nationwide injunction thing is lifted, that is a massive loss for the Democrats' 2.0 resistance.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. I mean, and you made a really important point there, which is part of how this has gone is that they're shopping. They're judge shopping, right? The Democrats and the progressives, they go around and they find judges who they know are sympathetic to their cases. And so that's part of it. And the argument is that the administration is making is, look, these judges can only issue injunctions for the people who come before them. They can't make these blanket statements nationwide. And that would also curtail this effort that the way that Democrats have found to effectively use the courts to thwart Trump's agenda nationally. And so it is a very important case. It's going to be a very important ruling in that respect.
I can't wait to find out what they think. And thankfully, since they're hearing it so late in the term, we won't have long to wait. We will get this decision before they take off. And usually they go all of June and a couple days into July, if history's any indication. This July, speaking of resets, there's a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio. This bloc of emerging superpowers, including China, Russia, India, and Iran, are meeting with the goal of displacing the U.S. dollar as the global currency. They're calling this the Rio Reset. As BRICS nations push forward with their plans, some worry global demand for U.S. dollars will decrease, bringing down the value of dollars in your savings. While this transition will not happen overnight, the Rio Reset could mark a pivotal moment. So learn if diversifying your savings into gold is right for you. Birch Gold Group can help you move your hard-earned savings into a tax-sheltered IRA in precious metals. Claim your free info kit on gold by texting MK to the number 989898. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold arm you with a free, no-obligation info kit on owning gold before July and the Rio Reset. Text MK to 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.